All right, Great American, here is review number 1, part 1. And we're going to look at the High Middle Ages in Europe from 1000, a little bit before our timeline, going into the Renaissance. And at this time, going on around the world, you're going to have the high points of like the Aztec and Incan civilizations going on in Mesoamerica. Down in West Africa, you've got the kingdoms of Mali and Songhai are reaching their high point. We've got the growing spread of Islam and the caliphates going on, and over in Asia, we're getting into the heydays of the Tang and the Song dynasty. All things we're going to hit in this unit, and the High Middle Ages are going to be exciting. Coming out of the Crusades is going to be this revitalization, reconnecting Europe to the trade routes, especially the Silk Road. And towns are going to grow just around from the cathedral and the castle, but new cities and towns are going to emerge all over the place, bringing an end to the Middle Ages. And what is really important about this time is that we're going to get the creation of modern nation states. Separate monarchies are going to grow in England and in France. And then a little bit later on in Spain, while Germany is going to remain ununified. All right, it will remain that way until Otto von Bismarck. The Holy Roman Empire will be a collection of 360 independent little kingdoms, while England, France, and Spain begin to come forth as modern nations. This is going to renew the emperor versus pope clash. They're going to compete for dominance as to who controls the power structure in Europe. So, this is all going to start with a very confusing thing, if you remember it, known as lay investiture. Lay investiture is what Peter the Great did in his absolute kingdom. He got rid of the head of the church and appointed a synod, one of his buddies, to that seat. Well, what kings and princes were doing at this time was making one of their buddies a cardinal or a bishop, giving them a rank and title within the church. This was a no-no. Only the Pope could do this. But royals were doing this hoping to gain influence. If you can control the hearts and the minds of the people, they will follow suit. Well, one of the strongest popes of the Middle and High Middle Ages is going to come about. And his name is Gregory VII of the Gregorian chant, kind of the way we sing Happy Birthday in class. And Gregory wants to end this practice. Like royals, you cannot make a non-religious person a lay person. You cannot make them a high-ranking church officials, a bishop, an abbot, a cardinal. You simply cannot do it. Gregory felt that this was corrupting and deviating the church from its spiritual mission. He said you cannot work for the church and God and man at the same time. You've got to pick one. And at this time in France, there was a powerful monastery in central France known as Cluny. And they began the Clunyastic reforms to maintain a lot of the wealth and splendor. A lot of high-ranking members of the church were living high on the hog, wealthy like kings. And they said, no, we're losing our focus on saving souls. And remember, life at this time is very tough. So we're going to clean house and we're going to maintain a spiritual church, and everybody is going to like it. And it's the Cluny monks that reject the subservience of the church. The church does not work for any political authority. Church and state are separate. And Gregory buys into this. And in 1075, he puts this to the test when he announces that there will be no more practice of lay investiture. If you do it, I will use one of the big powers a royal has, and that is excommunication. I will kick you out of the church. No baptism, no confession, no communion, no last rites. If you don't get that, you don't go to heaven. So you practice lay investiture and you're out. Well, in the Holy Roman Empire, we have King Henry. And King Henry says, oh, no, you can't do that to me. Do you know who I am? And he will have loyal bishops announce a new pope. So there is the pope for everyone else, and then the anti-pope chosen by Henry. And Gregory says, oh, is that the way you want to do it? So he excommunicates him. And everybody in the Holy Roman Empire is like, ooh, what's going on? And Henry had been trying to beat down and unify these princes, and now he's distracted. And when he's excommunicated, Henry loses a lot of support at home, so he goes to see the Pope, who is in his retreat high in the mountains where it's snowing, and Henry asks to come in and see him. And the Pope's like, Henry? I don't know anybody named Henry. Nope, sorry, don't have an appointment. So Henry strips off his royal robes and stands in peasant's garb in the snow asking forgiveness. The Pope makes him do this for 3 days, symbolic from crucifixion to resurrection. And finally, he comes in and he forgives Henry, and the two make up. Now, there's some different, problems between them, but what they will do is lay the groundwork. All right, that will happen about 50 years later, and when the Concordat of Worms is signed, a little town in Germany that ends the practice of lay investiture forever. What it says is the emperor can be there when a church official is promoted to abbot, to bishop, to archbishop, to cardinal. And when the church has promoted them, the emperor can come in and give them a plot of land, but only after the church, showing that the church is dominant over the political wing. The bishop, the abbot, will work for the pope, not for you. And so all that is going on at this time. And the big prime mover and shaker of this whole era is going to be the Crusades. The Crusades are the pinnacle of the power for the Pope. Now, they happened before our new AP World global timeline. At least the first one does. But as the Crusaders going down into the Byzantine world, into the Islamic world, that will reopen Western Europe to access to trade routes, the Trans-Sahara, the Spice Road, the Silk Road, and bring all this knowledge from the Middle East back into Europe. And so the Crusades are big time. Now again, they will start in 1090 as the Byzantine Emperor, I'm going to go over this pretty fast, is forced to call for help as Muslim Seljuk Turks were knocking on the door of Constantinople. Probably the most powerful pope of the Middle Ages, Pope Urban II, will respond by calling for the warring knights, the French, the British, the Italian, the German knights, who are always fighting each other. Let's get them out and focus them on a different enemy. And so the Crusades go off. All right? They go off and they do something that the Byzantines had been able to do. They push the Muslims back from Constantinople, and in July of 1099, they liberate the holy city of Jerusalem. But as soon as they leave, the Muslims come right back. And so it is only the first crusade that is successful. The important thing is it reconnects Europe to the outside world. Ideas, spices, the mystical skills I tell you guys about, like reading and writing, are brought back. The banking industry is going to be started. Goods and services that are going to change Europe come about. And there are 8 crusades total. Only the first one is successful. And then after that, it's the third one that gets a lot of airtime because it is the King Richard the Lionheart, Saladin, the Robin Hood story that makes it so unpopular. So 1096 to 1099, the Europeans are going to go down and they are going to liberate Jerusalem. Third Crusade, they try and do the same thing. Problem here is the Western European knights are so uncouth and so dirty, and they behave so badly. Pope Urban wanted to heal the great schism between the Roman Catholic and the Byzantine churches. The behavior of the knights only makes it wider. But here comes the important thing here in the last 5 or 6 minutes. We get the creation of new towns and townspeople. We're going to get a migration of people. You have low-born, unskilled peasants, all right? They pretty much have no hope of raising their social status. They're going to work and very hard. They are going to be poor, and they are going to die very young. So a couple of them say, what do we have to lose? Let's go down into the Holy Land. Let's get some of those goods like pepper and cinnamon and salt and this mystical thing that people thought came from the Garden of Eden like sugar, and let's bring it back. People will pay big money for it. Worst that can happen is we get killed, and who cares, because we're going to heaven and our life sucks anyway. So these guys begin to band together. They sail down the Mediterranean, or some of the more hardy ones go overland, and they buy goods cheap at the source in the Holy Land, and they bring it back. And they sell it for more money than they could ever believe. And what happens is it allows the creation of new towns. All right? This allows the king to begin to get rid of feudalism. Age-old feudalism, where the king cannot control all of the land. He doesn't have enough money to pay and hire workers, so the only currency he has is land. So he has to give lord of this and count of that and duke of that. I will give you land and you control it for me. I will build you a big house. I will give you villagers. You look after them for me. You collect taxes, and you keep a small army ready for my use if invaders come. Well, the problem is its proximity to authority. And after a while, I may have given you that house, but you come to believe that it is yours. So kings will begin to charter new towns. And people were allowed to live in these towns as long as they paid the king their taxes. And the idea of living in a town, especially if you were an artisan, gives you a sense of freedom. So it's the High Middle Ages that is going to destroy traditional feudalism. And it is in these towns that the first universities are going to be built, modeled after universities and madrasas from the Middle East, and cathedral schools, a school attached to, let's say, Notre Dame. And, the kings wanted a literate bureaucracy, so priests began to teach them. Well, then other people began to show up, and they wanted to learn. They may not have wanted to go into the church, but they wanted to know how to read and write. So these cathedral schools are going to bring back the idea of education in Europe. Like here we have, Sorbonne, and this is the, down in Salisbury, my favorite town in England, is where we are going to get these brand new first universities. A literate, trained group of people who some want to work for the church, but some want to go into business. And so again, this is a little bit before our timeline, but he is important to talk about where we're going to stop for the day. Sorry, this is a short one today. And that's going to be William the Conqueror. And William will be an illegitimate son of the Duke of Normandy, a former Viking who was given land in northern France. And his childhood is terrible. You guys know that story. But when his father and mother die on the way to crusade, or his dad dies on the way to crusade, he is kind of persecuted, and his father's disloyal knights try and kill him, so he goes away for a period of years before he comes back. And then the King of England dies, and it was his grandmother who gives him direct bloodline to the royal throne. He was literally the next living male heir in line to take the throne. But because he's French and illegitimate, the British nobles skip him and they give it to one of their own, a guy named Harold Godwinson. So in 1066, William is going to lead the second successful invasion of England. Here's, William got nice, it's right outside of Notre Dame. Here's his tapestry in Bayeux, France. And here is the little town of Ivy Bridge, England, which is what we are going to talk about. William goes over and he defeats everybody. It takes him about 20 years, but he will be crowned in Westminster Abbey, where to this day all English royalty are crowned. And William was tough, but he was also pretty smart. He looked around and he saw some things that the British did that he liked. And one of them was known as a legal writ. If there was a complaint, you would get a writ, which is a warning that says, should you do this again, all right, this is going to be your punishment. Should you come late to class again, you are going to have to, have lunch detention for the next week. So that way, when it happens, you can't say, well, I didn't know that was the punishment. Yes, you did. You received a legal writ. William likes that. The other thing he does is he begins to parlay. And parlaying simply means he's going to go out and meet with small groups of nobles throughout his kingdom. They can air their grievances, their needs, their wants, or concerns under no penalty. Now, this doesn't mean William has to do what they want or give them what they ask for, but at least they have a voice. They are allowed to speak freely. And people just appreciate that. It's like Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools. If you already know what you want to do, then just go ahead and tell me to do it. Don't say, oh, we're going to have a meeting of all constituencies, or we're going to come to a consensus. No, you know what you want to do. Just go ahead and tell me. I'm all ready. And William will take all of this, and why I showed you that picture of Ivy Bridge is he orders a census, all right? And this is where he knows, how many people live in what area. What parts of his kingdom are the most agricultural rich? Who is consuming more resources? If you consume more, you're going to have to pay more. If you grow a lot, I need to know that so I can adjust taxation. And William wrote this down in a book called the Doomsday Book. It's spelled Domesday, but it meant Doomsday. And it was said that it was easier to escape doomsday than having your name written in William's book. Your taxes were due once a year. You knew how much you owed, and you knew when they were going to be collected. It was tough, but it was fair. And by having the census, William would know if he had to adjust his taxation based on flood, famine, warfare, or whatever. So here is Westminster Abbey in England. This is William the Conqueror's castle in Caen. And here is a copy from the British Archives of the Doomsday Book. And here's the Magna Carta, which we're going to talk about. This one's only 20 minutes, guys. I'm sorry. Got a little bit ran a little bit late doing some things. Tomorrow, I'm going to finish part 2 of the High Middle Ages and probably move on to the next topic. But this will get you a little bit started on your reviews. Look over your notes, go through the textbook. This is going to be the earliest period that the exam could ask us about if we get a DBQ from the Middle Ages. All right, guys, we'll see you soon.